Hey everybody, Daniel here. Before we start this episode, I just want to let you know that during the recording of this episode, I did not realize this, but the SD card on my recorder had filled up in the middle of our recording. I did not realize that, and I did try and fix some moments in there, so I actually went in and ADR'd like stuff like my notes. But as far as the conversations go, I didn't want to ADR myself for that. So for those moments, I did leave it in. For the notes, I made sure to re-record them just so that you can clearly hear that information. But just fair warning, there are going to be a few technical difficulties here and there, but nothing too terrible. Hello and welcome to How Did This Not Get Made?
This is the podcast where we talk about the movies you never saw, the scripts that were never filmed, and the ideas that never even made it to the page. My name is David Spencer.
My name is Daniel Kaka.
My name is Sharon from Horrors Talk Horror.
And I'm Melinda from Horrors Talk Horror.
Yes, welcome to the show. We are not alone this week. We are joined by our friends from the podcast Horrors Talk Horror. I think that title is fantastic description where you can figure out exactly what the show is just based off of the title. But for anybody who might be a little bit confused, can you give a little bit of info on what your show is?
Yeah, so our tagline is Horrors Talk Horror. We're not really whores. We just like wordplay. So we're not sluts. We're not loose women.
Not that there's anything wrong with that, though.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. But yeah, we've been best friends since like third grade. And we used to play Poltergeist when we were little kids and Troll and other weird games like that. We would play Jason from Friday the 13th, where we would like chase each other around the yard and try and kill each other. We always talk about horror movies and the paranormal and true crime. And my husband Spencer was like, you guys should just do a podcast where you talk about that stuff because you talk about it all the time anyways.
Well, and we were watching a Lifetime movie version of the Flowers in the Attic series and making fun of it because like all 8-year-olds, we read that stuff and played Freddy Krueger when we met each other in the third grade. And Spencer was trying to do work not far from us and just started laughing at us talking and was like, you guys should do a podcast. And we were like, well, what should we do? And then like Sharon said, we were like, well, we talk about paranormal stuff, true crime, and our cats. There's a lot of true crime and cats out there. Yep. Paranormal, horror movies, boom.
And here we are.
All right.
Yeah, you guys have been going for what, like a little over a year, 2 years?
We started July of 2019.
All right.
So, yeah,
That's
we've
awesome.
been doing it for over a year.
I'm really excited to have you guys on the podcast and talk about horror because that is a genre that I know very, very little about. I am a scaredy cat when it comes to horror movies, and
Awesome.
I was worried that even just talking about a horror movie was going to freak me out today until I heard what we are talking about, and then I realized, oh, this is going to be fine. Dan, what are we talking about today?
We are talking about the Ed Wood film, I Woke Up Early the Day I Died. Now, I kind of want to explain my decision behind this movie because I do thoroughly enjoy horror movies. Halloween is definitely one of my favorite times of year. We recently got Shudder here, and that was probably, I believe, is one of the best streaming services that's out there. This is not sponsored by Shudder. I'm just saying that you have an excellent streaming service. But I wanted to find this balance because for you two, like, I feel like you both love horror films and thriller films, but the thing that got me the most was that you two really enjoy movies that are so bad, it's great. And for David here, knowing that he is not really one who seeks out horror films like I do, I had to find a balance where it's not like a creepy poltergeist type movie, demon possessing.
We could talk about a creepy movie in the future, but I am excited to talk about some Ed Wood as well.
Yeah. And I feel like as far as cinematic history goes, we have a lot to owe to horror films and what they offer. And it's one of those genres that is really looked down upon. You like, especially in when you look at the Academy and their choices of like what considers to be a good film and is technically a horror film. I believe that the last one, well, no, recently we had Get Out as a horror film that was recognized by the Academy, but the only one that I could think of before then was probably Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah, technically Parasite would fall like in the horror genre, but I think The Exorcist was also nominated, for some Academy Awards.
But you're right, though. I mean, like, Parasite wasn't your stereotypical horror movie. I didn't feel.
Mm-mm.
So, yes, everything you just said is valid. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. But, like, you even have directors that are well known today. So, like, Peter Jackson came from horror and ended up doing all of Lord of the Rings. And now when I know that, watching Lord of the Rings, there are so many moments in there that have horror aspects to it. So what are those, like the Knight Riders? I'm not good at
the Nazgul.
The Nazgul.
The
There's
Nazguls.
like 3 other names for them.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
In Fellowship, when Bilbo, like, for a second freaks out over the ring, like... Moments like that always jump out at me, where there is, you know, that little bits of horror weaved into that movie. I want to know what everybody's familiarity is with Ed Wood and how we feel about Ed Wood around here. Yeah, go for it, Mindy.
I had a college roommate whose name was Glenda, and she owned all of his movies because, of course,
Glen or Glenda.
Glenda. So that's how I got started with that Wood. Sharon?
Honestly, I'm not super familiar. I've seen Plan 9 and I've seen Tim Burton's movie on Ed Wood. And of course, I watched the film that we're going to be talking about today. Well, I watched the sped up version of the film that we're going to be talking about today. That's pretty much all I know about him. I did do some research, though, for this episode.
That's the same kind of knowledge I have of Ed Wood as well. I remember when I was going to film school, we would have bad movie nights all the time, which is, you know, how I got into enjoying bad movies, and one of the many that we watched was Plan 9 from Outer Space. But as far as bad movies go, that wasn't one that like jumped out to me as much as like Neil Breen. I could talk about Neil Breen movies all day long, or like just the weird trying to make high philosophy art as opposed to trying to make a weird genre movie. It isn't something that really stuck out to me as much. So Ed Wood is kind of one of those like bad movie, I wouldn't say blind spots for me, but is one of those just like something I haven't put a ton of thought and energy into. I mean, we should also mention the elephant in the room. Dan and I, you know, so much of our friendship is also talking about bad movies, and hence the name of this podcast taking its namesake from, you know, the go-to bad movie podcast.
Yes. I feel like with Ed Wood, he's kind of the OG when it comes to like the notorious director who will do whatever it takes to get the movie done. He has this drive about him, even though everyone's saying this is bad, terrible. They seem to not really take advice, but they are driven. And now we see that, especially now with like Tommy Wiseau, with Neil Breen, and we're starting to get more movies that are like that. And especially when my favorite thing to do, especially around October, is to find like those B-rated slasher teen horror films like Microwave Massacre or something like that. And I will eat that up all day.
Which we just talked about that movie on our podcast not too long ago. Microwave Massacre is definitely one of those like so bad it's good movie.
Yeah. And it's so enjoyable.
One of the things that sticks out to me about Ed Wood, and maybe my reading on him is completely tainted by the Tim Burton movie as instead of how he actually was, but he seems like a guy to me who didn't start making movies because he had stories he wanted to tell, but because he was a guy who wanted to have made movies. He wanted to define himself as a filmmaker, not because like there were stories he wanted to tell and ideas he wanted to get out there, but just because he wanted to take on the identity of someone who makes movies and wanted to like be a part of that world.
I think I read somewhere that for one of his films, there was a sequence where they described the special effects as dangerously barely safe, like gunshot rounds during some chase scene. He didn't really care about regulations.
Dan, I don't know if you want to start getting into your notes and leading us into this.
Yeah. So Ed Wood, he is notoriously known as the worst director in Hollywood. Throughout his career, he's done out-of-the-ordinary B-rated movies that explore mystery, horror, crime, and transvestism. Even though his recognition wasn't realized until it was too late, his lifestyle and tenacity is something that is more greatly admired today. Wood has written hundreds of stories, produced many of his own films, but there was one that did get away, and that script was I Woke Up Early the Day I Died. Now, we're going to go back a bit and just kind of describe who Ed Wood is and kind of his story. I do highly recommend watching the Tim Burton film with Johnny Depp. I think they do a really good job kind of summing up like this, especially just like this one moment in his life where they don't really go through the entirety of it, but it was like from his start when he got into the business to when he made Plan 9. And that's about it. But there was so much more that happened after that. Ed Wood, he was born on October 10th of 1924 in Poughkeepsie, New York. He was named after his father, Edward Wood. Thus, he goes by Edward D. Wood Jr.
I'm Edward D. Wood Jr.
So his dad, he was a postal custodian, so his job would actually take his family frequently all around the U.S. until they finally settled in New York. From a story from Wood's second wife, which was Kathy O'Hare, he said that his mother would dress him up in girls' clothing because she had always wanted a daughter. Now, growing up, he adored movies, and he especially idolized actors such as Buck Jones and Bela Lugosi. And for his 12th birthday, he was gifted a movie camera. It was a Kodak Cine Special. And in fact, one of the first things that he captured was the Hindenburg as it passed over the Hudson River. Obviously, this is before it crashed, and it actually crashed in Lakehurst, New Jersey.
So are you saying that Ed Wood's filmmaking career was always bound to end in disaster?
It does have an odd metaphor to it. In 1942, Ed Wood enlisted in the U.S. Marine Corps. Months after the attack on Pearl Harbor, he was ranked corporal before he was discharged. Wood claimed that he did face combat and that his front teeth were knocked out by a Japanese soldier. Records show that this was a lie. Instead, he experienced no combat, with the exception of a few minor bombing brigades that were executed by the Japanese at the Batio and the Ellis Islands. Instead, Ed had a filariasis infection that was treated by a naval dentist, and they removed his front teeth. So that's actually at the roof of your mouth near the front there, and they actually had to remove a lot of that. If you watch the movie Ed Wood, you may remember the trick-or-treaters are at Bela Lugosi's door, and it like scares them, and they're like, you look like a fake vampire or whatever. And then Ed Wood comes out and like pulls out his teeth.
How about these?
Hey, how'd you do that?
Dentures. Lost my pearlies in the war. No, I'm all man. I even fought in WW2. Of course, I was wearing women's undergarments under my uniform.
You gotta be kidding me.
Confidentially, I even paratrooped wearing a brassiere and panties. I'll tell you, I wasn't scared of being killed, but I was terrified of getting wounded and having the medics discover my secret.
In 1947, Wood had made his way to Hollywood, where he got a few jobs writing and directing TV pilots and commercials. He did go on to write and direct two short Western films, Crossroads of Loretto and Crossroads Avenger, The Legend of the Tuscan Kid. In 1948, Ed dove into the theater world by turning his unpublished novel that he wrote, Casual Company, which was all about his experience as a Marine. He turned this book into a play in which he wrote, produced, directed, and starred in. In the film Ed Wood, they don't actually show him starring in the play, but in reality, he would have been starring in his own play. The play premiered on October 25th of 1948 at the Village Playhouse here in Hollywood. The play was received poorly and got a lot of negative reviews. In 1952, Ed Wood, through his roommate, writer-producer Alex Gordon, got to meet his hero, Bela Lugosi. This would inspire Wood to go on to make movies on his own, which would also feature Lugosi for a lot of them. Throughout the years, he also developed a friendship with his son, Bela Lugosi Jr. Wood would go on to make the films Glen or Glenda in 1953, Jailbait, which is not what you think it is, in 1954, Bride of the Monster in 1955, Plan 9 from Outer Space in 1959, the unaired pilot of Final Curtain in 1957, Night of the Ghouls in 1959, and The Sinister Urge in 1960, Orgy of the Dead, and Necromancia in 1969. The genres he dabbled in were crime mysteries and horror, and would later take on sexploitation films towards the end of his film career. While working through these films, he would oftentimes bill himself under different pseudonyms like Angora, which refers to the fabric Angora, his favorite fabric to wear while dressing in women's clothing, and Ekdov Telmij, which is just vodka gimlet spelled backwards, which was his favorite drink. During his first film, Glen or Glenda, he went under the alias Daniel Davis. And as an author, he would sometimes go under Angora or Dr. T.K. Peters.
It's interesting to see all the different pseudonyms that he went under. It's kind of like with L. Ron Hubbard. When he was making his science fiction books, he actually started going under a pseudonym so that he could produce more books, but people weren't noticing that it was him over and over again. I also learned yesterday that Prince, when he changed his name to a symbol, that was actually his way of getting out of Warner Brothers' contract, because they told him that he was only allowed to produce one album per year, and he wanted to release 3 albums per year instead, because he was cranking out so much music. So he didn't do it because he was crazy. He was doing it because he was trying to get out of the contract. Yeah.
Gotta love Prince.
Mm-hmm.
Did you just listen to the Under the Cherry Moon episode?
Yes, I did. Yeah, I genuinely didn't know that, and he's kind of a genius for doing that. So, we need more Prince.
Yes, please.
Whoever's at Warner Brothers, if you're listening, you know where they are. You know where the tapes are. Just release them.
Ed Wood was also a published writer. Since the 60s, Wood has written at least 80 novels, mostly about crime and sex, along with hundreds of short stories and nonfiction pieces for newspapers and magazines. Some of the few notable names that jumped out at me was Black Lace Drag, which was later known as Killer and Drag, Orgy of the Dead, Devil Girls, Death of a Transvestite, the Sexitives? Wow. Sex executives. How do you combine those two? Sexecutives. Yeah. Let's see.
Not easy to say.
The Only House in Town, Necromancia, making a comeback, The Undergraduate, The Study of Fetishes and Fantasies, and The Fugitive Women. Just a few.
He was kind of bored, wasn't he?
Yeah, just a little. Yeah. So we cannot talk about Ed Wood without talking in detail about his comfort in cross-dressing. While married to his first wife, Dolores Fuller, whom Wood featured in his films Glen or Glenda, Jailbait, and The Bride of the Monster, she was unaware that Ed regularly wore clothing intended for women. His second wife, Kathy O'Hara, stated in Rudolph Gray's biography, Nightmare of Ecstasy, The Life and Art of Edward D. Wood, Jr., that when it came to cross-dressing, it was not sexual for Ed, but rather comforting, especially when he wore Angora fabric. Later in his life, rather than hiding it, he embraced it, and would regularly dress in public under the drag alter ego Shirley, who has appeared in multiple stories of his. There's even a clip of Wood shot on 8mm film of Wood dressed in drag, just doing normal things like reading or trying on other outfits. Throughout the years, Ed Wood's depression had gotten worse, and he would turn to alcohol for relief. Both Ed and his wife Kathy both became alcoholics and were evicted out of their Hollywood apartment on December 7th of 1987. Luckily, their friend, actor Peter Coe, let them stay at his apartment in North Hollywood. On December 10th, just 3 days later, Ed had asked Kathy for another drink. She had enough of Ed bossing her around, so she just ignored his cry when he yelled, "Kathy, I can't breathe." She checked in on him 20 minutes later to discover that he had died. In the book, she described the experience saying, "I still remember when I went into the room that afternoon and he was dead. His eyes and mouth were wide open. I'll never forget the look in his eyes. He clutched at his sheets. It looked like he'd seen hell." Ed Wood was only 54 when he died of a heart attack. After his death, he was cremated and scattered at sea. It didn't actually say which sea. I just assume that might be the Pacific Ocean because that's what's closest to us.
In 1980, 3 years after his death, all of his works were actually awarded a Golden Turkey Award for Worst Director of All Time. The Golden Turkey Awards was a book that was published in 1980 by the film critic Michael Medved and his brother Harry that recognized the worst Hollywood has to offer. There were other noticeable awards that were in there. So like worst casting that went to John Wayne for Genghis Khan and the Conqueror. Worst film went to Plan 9 from Outer Space. Worst vegetable movie was Attack of the Mushroom People. Worst performance as Jesus Christ went to Ted Neely in Jesus Christ Superstar.
Oh, hard disagree. Hard disagree.
Disagree hardcore.
That movie is great.
I've seen him live, he and Carl Anderson in those roles, and it blew me away. And I am not a religious person. That's all I have to say about that.
Everything about this book is now invalid after making that comment about Ted Neely.
Although I will say my favorite is worst two-headed transplant movie, The Thing with Two Heads.
The categories are fantastic, I have to say.
This is definitely one of those joke books, but because of that, that's why we got how Ed Wood got known as the worst movie director of all time, was because of the book. He was never known of this like while he was a filmmaker. No one really knew who he was until this book came out and was like, yeah, worst filmmaker was the guy who made Plan 9 from Outer Space.
Was Plan 9, did it have a cult status at all while Ed Wood was alive? Did it not until after he died that people like went back and saw like, hey, what is this thing?
Ed Wood's legacy still lives on to this day and has certainly gathered quite the following. And as a joke, there is the Church of Ed Wood, which was established in 1996 by Reverend Steve Galindo of Seminole, Oklahoma. And so far, it's baptized over 3,500 members. And every year they celebrate Woodmas, which is actually, well, the day that we're recording it, it's today, October 10th, which is Ed Wood's birthday.
Aw, happy birthday, Ed Wood.
Mm-hmm. And the days leading up to it, they have Ed Wood-themed parties, they have concerts, and of course they have movie marathons of his films.
I think I want to get in on this.
Well, we're going to have to move to Oklahoma.
No, thank you.
Never mind. I don't want to get in on this.
Anyway, whatever. There's the Church of Ed Wood, and I'm happy that it exists. 2 years prior to this, there was the Tim Burton biopic, Ed Wood, which starred Johnny Depp as the eccentric director.
Are you people insane? I'm the director. I make the casting decisions around here.
Well, I thought this was a group effort.
No!
The film showed Wood as an endearing and passionate filmmaker, doing whatever it takes to make his films. The film drew a lot of stories from Rudolph Gray's 1992 biography, Nightmare of Ecstasy. By far, Plan 9 from Outer Space is his most beloved and essential film. Every Ed Wood movie marathon must require this. It even has musical interpretations. In fact, there was a remake that was done in 2015, and there is the Plan 9 from Outer Space musical. I believe there was one that came out in the 80s, another one that came out recently, and I think another one in the 90s. Yeah, there's quite a few.
Starring Ted Neely.
Wait, seriously?
I'm joking. I don't think he's singing
anymore.
anymore.
I was like, that would be amazing.
The script that got away from him was a story that was titled The Silent Night, or The Night of Silence. It's unknown when Wood actually began writing the script. With how many stories that he wrote, it was hard to keep track of. It was rumored that he wrote the first draft sometime in the 50s and kept on revising it through the 60s and 70s. What's strange is that he was someone who didn't hang on to much of anything. The evictions before his death is not the first that Wood had experienced in his life. So for him, having material possessions were more of a burden for him. So he would, without hesitation, just throw away books, scripts, unpublished manuscripts, because for him, he saw them as useless. But throughout his struggles, he managed to hang on to this one script, which after many revisions, he renamed to The Day I Woke Up Early, The Day I Died, which was in 1974. The title refers to the Emily Dickinson's poem 465 that reads, "I heard a fly buzz When I Died. What was so unique about this film was that it did not rely on dialogue, unlike Wood's previous movies, which relied heavily on dialogue and narration to portray exposition and the film's theme very extensively.
We are all interested in the future, for that is where you and I are going to spend the rest of our lives. And remember, my friend, future events such as these will affect you in the future.
This was Ed's attempt to make a silent film, something that he would be reminiscent of the films that he watched while growing up, especially if he was a fan of Bela Lugosi, who actually started his film career as a silent film actor. In Rudolph Gray's biography, he suggests that Ed was influenced by Robert Rouse's The Thief in 1952, which starred Ray Milland, since the main character in Ed Wood's script is also named The Thief. It felt like he was more maybe paying tribute to Lugosi in that. I'm not sure if you know like the story of why Lugosi became Dracula and having that like Hungarian accent was because no one really knew what to do with Bela. Like when you are introducing dialogue and all of a sudden you're like, no one can understand this guy. It's like trying to figure out what to do with Arnold Schwarzenegger. You're like, okay, well, he's Hercules. Like if you watch that movie, it was like Hercules in New York or something like that.
Yeah.
Like if you only saw that movie and someone had said that man right there is going to be an A-list celebrity, you'd be like, bullshit. No way. And Bela Lugosi was kind of the same way, where they're like, that guy's going to be a big star. And they're like, okay, well, once sound hits, it's going to be pretty difficult for him to find a job.
Yeah.
Being Dracula was a miracle for him to find that. So there was a cast in mind. First, as the thief, he wanted Aldo Ray. The two had never worked together before, but he was known for starring in the films The Day They Robbed the Bank of England in 1960, Pat and Mike in 1952, There Were No Angels in 1955, The Green Berets in 1969, and a lot more after that. Another casting hopeful was John Carradine.
Bigot, womanizer, all these years you've blamed someone else, your son, your grandson, because you didn't have courage enough to look at yourself. That's a lie! It's the God's truth. I've seen you drunk. I've dried you out and sent you back into the world. It was you that killed our old man. It was seeing what you were. You blind!
Who was one of the most prolific character actors at his time. You may recognize his children now as Robert Carradine from Revenge of the Nerds. He's also the father in Lizzie McGuire. David Carradine, who portrayed Bill in Kill Bill, and then he was known for his Kung Fu series. There's Keith Carradine, who was Tom Frank in Nashville and Wild Bill Hickok in Deadwood.
That's right.
Anyway, so back to their father, John. He wanted him to play the role of the gravedigger. And then the other two actors that were thought of to bring on were David Ward, John Edgar, to play the police officers in that. Now, unfortunately, Ed didn't get a chance to see this film through, obviously. Kathy Wood, which is now Ed's widow, held onto the script for years after his death. After the success of the Ed Wood biopic by Tim Burton, Kathy, Bob Blackburn, and Bob Weinberg, who was an entertainment lawyer, sought to get out The Day I Died properly produced. So Bob Blackburn, who was a good friend of Kathy's in the later years of her life, he was a huge fan of Ed Wood and his works. He is a music and promotions director for the Westwood One and Dial Global radio networks and works independently as his own sound design firm. He was previously the admin for the Edward Jr. Facebook fan page, which is now led by Leslie Morris. And he helped produce Rick Tell's Ed Wood, the musical. So not only is Plan 9 from Outer Space a musical, there's also a musical all about Ed Wood himself.
Perfect.
Which I need to see all of these.
Yeah.
There's so many musicals that emerge from just doing the research. So, like, I had no idea that there was a Harry Potter musical. I had no idea about the Batman musical. There's... I need to see all of these.
Carrie is a musical. Heathers, the movie Heathers is a musical.
I knew of Shrek, and that was about it. The three of them were lucky enough to meet the producer, Chris Hanley, who at the time had only executive produced one film, Split Second, in 1992. He would later go on to do American Psycho 1 and 2, The Killer Inside Me, Spring Breakers, and a lot more.
Oh, interesting.
The other person they met was Eris Iliopoulos. He was a Greek artist and photographer who is someone you'd probably consider a die-hard Wood fan. His only other IMDb credit was when he played Rudy in the 1986 film Manhattan Gigolo.
Bye, Danny. See you tomorrow. See ya. That was great. Take it easy.
In which he suggested a lot of ideas to the director and unintendedly got a writing credit for doing that movie. I don't know if anyone's ever seen clips of this movie. I saw a few clips doing research of this just to see like what he had done. And it looks like someone's senior thesis that was shot on a Bolex 16mm camera.
It's awesome is what you're saying.
Yes. Like you can barely make out the faces in this film. It's pretty bad. For the next few months, Eris and Hanley started to option the script around Hollywood, looking for investors, producers, and actors. Eris knew that he would be the one to direct the film, but that wasn't enough to get others on board until they finally booked their first actress, who was Christina Ricci. She was convinced to do the role because she had previously worked with Chris Hanley when she did the film Buffalo 66. Now, this film went from just being a pipe dream to something that seemed plausible. To get more actors and producers involved, Eris and Hanley went to the Sundance Film Festival that year to try and drum up some interest. Literally wining and dining people to actually be part of this film. Soon, actors and fans of Ed Wood would now be throwing themselves at this chance to make this Ed Wood movie. Billy Zane signed on to be the lead as the thief, even though Eris first wanted Ziggy Pop to play that role, which would have been fantastic. Ron Perlman was cast as the gravedigger. When Billy Zane got interested in the script, though, he did call Eris asking him if he could come down to Mexico so they could discuss the role. He was not in the position to do that, but Billy Zane actually ended up flying up from Mexico to LA to actually confirm that he was going to be the lead of this movie. He was extremely excited to be in an Ed Wood film, which I imagine that for most everyone part of this cast. For the character of the thief, they settled on the influence of commedia dell'arte, the 16th century Roman theater acting style in which there's a duality between being human and being a crazy person, which, seeing the film, we definitely saw that. The other film stars, like Tippi Hedren and Bud Cort, joined. There were TV stars Jonathan Taylor Thomas, John Ritter, Rick Schroeder, and Steve Weber. There were also former Ed Wood actors like Vampira, Conrad Brooks, and David Ward. And on top of that, there was Eartha Kitt, who Eris had actually met at a party. And she actually said that she was indirectly in an Ed Wood movie because there's that one part in Glen or Glenda, that marquee you actually see, there's a Eartha Kitt movie. So because of that, she was like, of course, I've already been in an Ed Wood movie. We might as well complete that.
She's also on the marquee in Plan 9.
What?
I just rewatched that the other day. I just watched it for the first time the other day. I never saw the whole thing. And I was taking notes and saw that Eartha Kitt was credited in I Woke Up Early the Day I Died. And then I saw her name on the marquee. And I was like, oh, shit. So
that's amazing.
That's 3 movies.
He probably used the same footage of the marquee in both. I mean,
oh yeah, he was notorious for reusing footage and stock footage. Who else was in the? Oh, they also had Sandra Bernhard, Karen Black, Tara Reid, and Nicole Sheridan. And to honor Ed Wood, Kathy Wood was actually given a role. She was given a cameo in this film. So this flocked a lot of great actors.
Yeah.
A lot of well-known around this time. I mean, Billy Zane wasn't known for doing Titanic yet, but he was known for doing The Phantom at this point, right?
And Twin Peaks.
Dead Calm.
But we knew him from Twin Peaks. Audrey Horne fell in love with him, so that's how we knew Billy Zane.
It's insane that they had so many big name stars for this.
Yeah.
This movie, I'm wondering if it was just kind of like a domino effect, if, they heard, oh, well, Billy Zane's going to be doing this. And, oh, well, we got Ron Perlman and Christina Ricci and all these other people were like, well, was it the people who were already signed up that made everyone else want to do it? Or was it more of like Ed Wood's name where everyone's like, this is my last chance to be, or my only chance to be in an Ed Wood movie?
Isn't that kind of how that movie 43 happened, where like they got every celebrity in there just because like, oh, so-and-so's doing it, so you should do it too. And like, I could be totally off base, but I believe the story I heard is that even started where the filmmakers were lying about who they had in there and then just got enough people to actually sign on based on the lies that then they could say, oh, Hugh Jackman's in this, so you definitely want to be in this too.
That's amazing.
I think they both complement each other, because if there is a rise in Ed Wood popularity, to find out that there's an Ed Wood movie that's going to be made that he never got a chance to produce, and then you have these major actors behind it, you're just like, that just confirms that someone is seriously putting this film together.
No offense to Billy Zane, but I think it was more... There's an Ed Wood movie that's never been made, as more than, wait, Billy Zane is going to be in this movie?
Billy Zane?
Yeah.
In a dress?
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like when they announced that they were going to be redoing like the new Star Wars movies, and everyone wanted to be on board. And like, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't Samuel L. Jackson was like, I'll be the butler or something. Just like put me in this movie. Like, I'll do anything.
Or how Daniel Craig was a stormtrooper and you never see his face at all. I think Edgar Wright got in there as well. He was like
Simon
one of the
Pegg.
He
was the guy who wanted to buy BB-8 from Ray.
Tom Hardy was a stormtrooper in one of the sequel movies.
Amazing.
That's amazing.
Nice.
So I get the draw. I get why you would want to go into this. And like, you have Chris Henley behind this, so you're like, he's a real producer. These are real actors. I love Ed Wood. I'm in. I don't care.
The whole culture around enjoying bad movies. You get to know before you start filming that this could be a cult hit that people watch because it's silly and goofy and weird. And I assume that that's the draw, but I assume that's probably also part of the downfall of why this didn't end up being as successful.
Yes and no. We'll discuss why it didn't go out there. But filming had begun on August of 1998 in San Pedro on a very tight 20-day shooting schedule, which is very much like how Eddie would shoot his movies as quickly as possible. To put in perspective, though, Wood's fastest shot film, which was The Sinister Urge, that took them 5 days to shoot it. And that movie was 71 minutes long.
Oh my God.
Wow.
I think the Saw was very similar as well, where they shot that whole film in 21 days, I believe. 21 days? I'll have to double check that. But from what I remember, that one was a tight shooting schedule as well. So Billy Zane, he seemed to be an integral part of the production. Along with being the star of the film, he contributed a lot of the visual and musical aspects of the film. It was almost as if Billy and Eris were co-directing the film. Eris, he was the biggest fan of Ed Wood, and that was certain. I mean, he was also a photographer, so he had a good eye for composition. And in a article that was written by Daniel D. Dickholtz, that can't be a real name. Anyway.
Oh, it's an unfortunate name. Sorry, we're really 14-year-old boys.
That's fine. I
kind of
understand. But he claimed that his inspirations for the film, or at least his artwork, is Federico Fellini, Man Ray, Salvador Dali, Jean Cocteau, Pablo Picasso, and Bertolt Brecht. He saw Ed Wood's film as a avant-garde and appreciated his ability to innovate and find ways to get the job done with the time and the budget restraints. In the film, there were many inserts of stock footage, which is something that Ed Wood would frequently do in his films to fill in a lot of footage that would either be too expensive or too time-consuming to shoot. He also shot a lot of scenes in wide shots so that you would, much like Wood, having things in wide shot, you can capture as much coverage as possible and just be on with it. We have been talking about this movie, and I should at least give like a brief synopsis of the film. We'll see how brief this is, but Billy Zane is a mental patient that escapes from Hope Sanitarium by tying up a nurse, drugging her, and putting on her outfit. This is a similar plot point from Ed Wood's 1967 novel, Devil Girls. He walks out of the door without anyone noticing, I guess. No one notices this man dressed up as a nurse going out. But as soon as he escapes, he finds clothes from a unsuspecting resident that have left their clothes out to dry, and then goes to a thrift store clothing rack, which they have the racks on the sidewalk. From there, he steals some shoes and I guess a jacket as well. This thrift store that they filmed at, it was actually a real thrift store. And the reason why they wanted to film there is because the director, Aris, had looked at this and was like, it's so fake, it looks like a real set. And this thrift store was located like right across the street from his hotel that he was staying at. The thrift store owner was played by Bud Court and insisted to be billed as Lord Henrik Binky Alcola III.
Well done. If you're going to be in a movie, go big or go home.
Yeah, that was strange, the shoe sniffing thing. He was already like suspicious of Zane, and then he just turns around and he's like, no, I just wanted his shoes, and that's exactly what I wanted.
I have to say, I'm really glad that you're going to go through the beats of this, because I tried watching that really sped up version on YouTube and I could not tell what was going on through most of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was hard to see a lot of the beats.
Did anyone else get a little motion sickness watching that?
Absolutely.
I had to watch it slowed down, but doing the synopsis, I also like had to pause and start it up again. So I guess it wasn't as nauseating on my end. Yeah, but the thing is, because it's not the same score as the film, like, the music isn't sped up. It's just the footage that's sped up. Yeah. The music stays the same. So that'll throw you off just a little bit. Zane is going insane. There's this ringing that's going on internally in his ear that causes him to become like a raging lunatic, just running up and down the streets. After that spell is over, the thief steals and eats a hot dog from a street vendor. The thief finds a valet parking lot where he knocks out the attendant, steals his gun, and takes a car. On the road, he begins to tail an armored car, which is according to the script that displays on the screen. Now, I do have to explain that a little, because there are many times where you see excerpts of the script on the screen throughout the film. The reason for that is to display the actual script from Ed Wood and to explain a lot of the decisions that were made by the main character.
Wait, so that was a choice for the movie. That wasn't something where they didn't get around to filming that, and this was just, that was actually an artistic choice.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
They just threw that up there because it was, they didn't get to film it.
They put that in on purpose as kind of like, this is Ed Wood's cameo.
Cool.
He sees that they're dropping off cash at a loan company. He enters and manages to rob the place while getting into a gunfight and manages to kill one of the clerks. He escapes, but has another ear-ringing sound attack. The police, while searching for who robbed the loan company, they manage to connect that it's the same guy who escaped the sanitarium and somehow makes the front page of the news. I found that as like an interesting way of like displaying where he is and like how close the cops are. It's like when you have the star meter in GTA to find out like how wanted you are. He has to look at the newspaper to see how wanted he is.
Wait a minute. How long does this take place over? Because like he's wearing the same thing throughout the whole thing. Is it supposed to be the same day and this newspaper thing is just kind of breaking that reality?
This takes place over multiple days, I believe.
Okay.
Because, like, with Plan 9 from Outer Space, there are scenes where, like, the cops show up to the gravesite and it's the middle of the day. They go to the grave and it's, like, nighttime all of a sudden.
Filmmaking is not about the tiny details. It's about the big picture.
The big picture?
Yes.
Then how about when the policeman arrived in daylight, but now it's suddenly night?
What do you know? Haven't you heard of suspension of disbelief?
We kind of see that with this as well, where it's, like, they enter into some scenes where it's daytime, then it goes to nighttime. But they add in that one element that he just kind of falls asleep wherever he wants to and wakes up, and all of a sudden that explains the daylight in there.
To be fair, Ed Wood would often have chase scenes with cars, and then suddenly it would be completely different make and models of cars, but they'd still be the same chase scene. So I think you're asking a bit much here, David.
You hear that title and you think it's going to be a story that takes place over a day. The beginning of the movie is waking up early and the end of the movie is him dying. Maybe that just got in my head, and so I assumed that that's what was happening.
It's a logical thought.
Yeah. It's like assuming that the movie The Room takes place in one room when really it takes place in some guy's apartment. Yeah, you're looking into this way too far. I don't know. So while on the run, the thief stumbles upon a burial in which there's some strange ritual that's happening. Like when he hits the tuning fork against the casket and kind of like rubs it against there. It's weird. It gets dark. Everyone leaves. But before the gravedigger can tend to burying the body, the thief opens the casket to find that it's not the lone officer that he thought was in there earlier that day, but instead a pile of like decayed bones. There was a robe, there was an artifact in there, leading him to believe that this was from a cult. Regardless, he stashes the stolen money in the casket, which I don't fully understand why he hides it in there, but sure, why not? For the sake of the story, I'm just going to accept it.
Haven't you heard of suspension of disbelief?
Meanwhile, the gravedigger, who is played by Ron Perlman, is getting drunk and playing bagpipes. And this is the reason for the thief's weird manic spells that, leaves this ringing inside of his head.
Okay.
While this is happening, the cops are beginning to close in on him while searching through the graveyard. The thief wakes up the next day in an empty grave somehow, managing to escape the cops. Sure. He goes back to find the casket where he managed to hide his money and find the casket is missing. He goes to the gravedigger's pyramid, I guess, where he lives. The thief kills him by smothering him with a pillow, finds a note that states that the casket has been moved to the mortuary. The thief searches the mortuary, finds the casket in the bag that he stashed with the money in it, but the money is gone. The bag is there, but the money is gone.
Really quick, I just want to say that I really appreciated Ron Perlman's death stare. He had an excellent, goofy-ass death stare when he got killed.
Ron Perlman probably belongs in an Ed Wood film more than, like, anybody else in this cast.
He's fantastic.
Yeah. Oh, he's great. And I hope nobody takes that as, like, me insulting Ron Perlman. What I mean is like, that guy is just built for weird genre things.
Yeah, that's
specifically
true.
Ron Perlman himself, because he's a big dude, and, like, I follow him on Twitter, and I wouldn't want to be on his bad side. But he rules.
We also had an interesting casting, like, around the mortuarium, because one of the Undertakers is Carol Stryken, who played Lurch in The Addams Family.
And the Giant in Twin Peaks.
Yes.
With which Sharon and I are very familiar, obviously.
His look is perfect for being an Undertaker. It's so good. So next we are at the strip club where he encounters one of the mourners, who is played by Sandra Bernhard. She seems to be the main attraction there. This was shot at the Ambassador Hotel. That's the same hotel where Robert F. Kennedy was assassinated. In the scene, we see Bernhard dancing in pasties and a thong. She says that she was really comfortable doing this and actually said, like, had he asked her to do this nude, she would have definitely done this. But the thing that she didn't really approve of was the music that Eris was providing. So instead, they actually had heavy metal piping through the speakers at the Ambassador Hotel so that she could dance along with that.
Huh.
In her dressing room, somehow the thief gets in there. She waits for her to be alone and kills her. He looks around for the money, but she doesn't have it. Next, he goes to a bar, finds one of the mourners there, which is played by Michael Green. The thief gets invited back to his shack for a drink. Also, strange happenstance there. The thief starts searching around his home when he passes out. When he wakes up from the noise that's being made by Billy Zane, he decides to slap him. And once he realizes that the money is not there, he decides to burn the shack down and run away. It's definitely one of those, like, the fuck did I just watch?
I don't know. That's how I deal with my problems. Just burn the shack down and run.
Yeah, he just burns it down. Sure, why not? But, I mean, he also escaped from a sanitarium, so this makes perfect sense. Once you have that explanation of, like, he was a former crazy person and still is a crazy person, all of his actions now make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the thief runs away, robbing a woman of some petty cash, and nearly gets caught by the cops, but the cop gets distracted by a sudden car crash that happens nearby. The thief is now on a bus, which is almost shot similar to like the last shot of The Graduate, almost reminiscent of it.
I have that written down.
Yeah.
Huh.
There's also like that stock footage when he's looking outside and sees the children playing, but like it's clearly stock footage from like the 1950s. So it goes from like color, black and white, kid in a cowboy outfit. He makes his way all the way out to San Pedro, where he finds Melinda Usted, who is played by Tippi Hedren, who we know is from The Birds. They find her in her lighthouse. The thief starts searching their house, and then they begin to fight. The kerfuffle ends when she is thrown off the roof, and her dead body is found on the beach by Jonathan Taylor Thomas, of course. That's the last person I want to see just before I die is Simba himself. It's interesting to take note that in her shots, there were a lot of birds that seemed to flock around her in the shot. And that thing was not planned. And Tippi, while she was on set, she was quoted saying, "That happens all the time when I'm on set."
What? That's wild.
Birds just flock to her.
Maybe she made friends when they made the birds.
I think it's the ghost of Alfred Hitchcock constantly following her around and trying to torment her still, like beyond the grave.
Jeez Louise. Why do birds suddenly appear?
Aww.
The thief finds a cheap motel where he can hide, but is actually a brothel. In the lobby, we get a brief cameo from Vampira. While filming, director Eris, he got a chance to chat with her about her past and like working with Ed Wood. She talked about how she had an affair with James Dean at one point.
Okay.
How there was another unmade script of Wood's that he had wrote in the 50s called Ghouls Goes West. And she thought that Lady Gaga would be great for this film if this script were ever to be made. So we might be getting another Ed Wood film in the future.
That would be amazing.
Mm-hmm.
While the thief waits in his room, he is interrupted by Christina Ricci, playing a prostitute trying to steal his money. Once he finds out what she's trying to do, he kicks her out of the room. Oh, we should also mention that the pimp or whatever at the brothel is I forget his name, the actor's name, but he was the superintendent in Friends. He was Krieger, the guy who fixed stuff and dances with Joey in that episode.
I only know Krieger from the show Archer, so
I know what you're talking about.
Yay!
Dan is the resident's Friends fan.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so later in the night, the thief heads over to a club where they find Eartha Kitt singing "Anywhere I Hang My Heart." And that's probably the closest thing that we have to dialogue in this movie is when she sings. Also, she's supposed to be the cult leader, although I didn't really get that. Maybe because it was sped up. A lot of the summaries out there, it says that she was the cult leader, and she's credited as that too.
I'll take your word for it, credits.
Yep. So the bouncer, he gets suspicious of Billy Zane and sends a witness to start watching him closely. Just then, Billy goes into another ear-ringing spell and starts a massive fight in the club and somehow makes his way and weasels his way out of there. The thief now finds himself at a carnival, which features the sharpshooter Robert Forrest, played by John Ritter, who is another one of the mourners. John Ritter, you may remember from the 1990 It film. While trying to get in, which he now doesn't have any money because he was robbed, that is the cameo that we see from Kathy Wood. She is the attending who's walking out. Billy asks her, like, "Hey, can I have some money?" And she ends up hitting Billy with her purse. That's her.
Yes.
Nice.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
The thief then sneaks backstage to all the performers, finds Robert Forrest, and tries to fight him. Although the thief now is outnumbered and has no choice but to escape, he takes off in a stolen cab. He makes his way back to the gravesite and into the pyramid. He is searching again, just in case he missed his money from before and doesn't find it. He discovered that the gravedigger's body is still there, so he wraps up the body, throws it over him, grabs the bagpipes over his shoulders, and leaves the pyramid for some reason. I don't fully understand. I think there was like a little bit there from the script as to like why he was doing that. But like, again, he is a crazy person doing crazy things. So that validates everything that he does.
I just went with it.
Yeah. All the while, there is this red glow and smoke that's filling the cemetery, which is kind of reminiscent of like how Ed Wood would film a lot of his cemetery scenes, is just like having a lot of smoke in the background to like cover up the fact that he didn't really have much on set. The cops from before are now closing in on him again. He runs through the cemetery and lays down the body. When it becomes too much, he goes into another fit of rage and tears open the bagpipe, and to discover that all of that money had been in there the entire time. The next morning, the cops find the thief's dead body in an empty grave. The camera pans up, and over the cemetery, credits roll.
Is there a non-sped up version of this?
That'll be explained as to like why.
Put a pin in that.
Yeah, there isn't any actual versions of this movie that you can find. And I looked everywhere. Like, I was willing to buy this movie on eBay, Amazon, whatever it took, and it's not there. It's not anywhere that I could find.
I mean, I guess I assumed that the person who uploaded this sped up version did it from an original version and just sped it up to get around taking it down for copyright or something.
Right.
Yeah. I can't figure out like why they chose that. Like, it definitely made a lot more of the scenes a bit more palatable to watch, I guess. I wish there was a better version somewhere out there, but until then, this is honestly the best version that we can find.
If any listeners know, yeah.
If anyone has a copy, please send it our way. I'll gladly watch it.
Do you guys know who the Canadian director Guy Maddin is?
No.
He mostly got started, I think, with short films. It was either Sundance or one of those film festivals where his short, The Heart of the World, which is like one of my favorites, was playing prior to whatever movie would be playing in that theater. And people were going to see the short as opposed to the whatever movie was playing. And that's how he got his started and his acclaim. But he very much makes movies not quite as ridiculous as Ed Wood. He is a big fan of Ed Wood's. Heart of the World, which you can probably find on YouTube, is all music and some of that even sped up kind of action. But his movies are very abstract and very colorful and over the top. And so I was like, why didn't they just have Guy Maddin make this? Because it looked like something that he would really absolutely love to do. So I'm just putting that on the table. Hollywood gods, if you hear me.
So what happened after this got filmed?
So it got filmed. So with this movie being silent, quote unquote, if it is, it did rely heavily on the score, which was primarily written by Larry Gruppe to carry the film. Before this, he notably did music for The Usual Suspects and The Cable Guy. Other songs that were featured in the film were Jesus, I Was Evil. Jesus, I was evil. Jesus, I was evil. By Darcy Clay, which we see in the opening credits there. There was also music from the bands Mindy, ZVH, which I've never heard before. And there was even a song from Billy Zane's older sister, Lisa, who did the song Blinky Blink. Something that would go unnoticed, especially if you watch this on YouTube, is the differences in Billy Zane's outfit. So the costume designer, Marianne Seo, worked hard in getting Zane's suit just right. She easily went over budget. So it started off with the nurse outfit, but there were multiple suits that Zane would wear depending on what the scene would call for. So depending on his mood, the collared shirt that was underneath his jacket would actually change color, depending on the mood that he was in.
Wait, are you saying the mood that he was in as in the character in the movie, or the mood that he was in as in Billy Zane on different days just decided to wear different shirts?
Yes.
Okay.
He also had different jackets as well. Whenever he got more agitated in scenes, they would actually give him a tighter suit, so it looked like he was hulking out.
That's awesome.
So before the premiere of the film, they did a screening over at the Chinese Theater in Hollywood, and that was mostly for Kathy, so that they could watch the film with her. To her, this was a dream come true. And though this would have made Eddie very happy. And she quoted saying, "One thing he did take was one of the last scripts he wrote. He really loved it. I woke up early the day I died, and this one Angora sweater that he loved so much." That was when she was talking to the journalist Joe Bevlins. Eris said that Eddie would have walked up and down Hollywood Boulevard, and he always wanted to have a screening at Mann's Chinese Theater.
Aw.
Made his dream come true.
I have to say, I did not know there was that much talent in the Zane family.
The fact that this played at the Chinese Theater just reminds me of Tommy Wiseau, because apparently Tommy Wiseau always wanted to get one of his movies played at the Chinese Theater. One of the other podcasts that we did, Thank You Internet, man, that show keeps being brought up in our different podcasts lately. But Michael and I interviewed somebody who was from 5 Second Films, and they had just done a feature-length movie called Dude Bro Party Massacre 3, which was like supposed to be like a B-movie slasher ripoff. So they had Greg Sestero in their movie, and like he was a big part of the movie and like helping getting funding for it and everything. So when they would do screenings, they would like tour around and just do like different little art house screenings with Q&As and stuff. These movie theaters would always do double features of The Room and Dude Bro Party Massacre 3. And apparently Tommy Wiseau started to get very upset about this, that Greg was going off and promoting this other movie and using The Room to help promote it. According to the guy we interviewed, Tommy Wiseau would call these theaters personally and tell them not to show his movie with this other movie, and was very upset about it. When we did the interview, this was before Dude Bro Party Massacre 3 came out. Like, they were still in like their early screenings and stuff. And Tommy would be really, really upset to know that we just booked a screening to show it at the Chinese Theater. And so Tommy is going to be really, really upset when he finds out about this. Anyways, yeah, I just think that's funny that every bad filmmaker, probably every filmmaker, good or bad, just wants their movie to show at the Chinese Theater. I'm glad there was an Ed Wood movie there that showed there.
Me too. I also want to see Dude Bro Party Massacre.
Dude Bro Party Massacre 3. The whole concept for it is it's supposed to be an 80s slasher film, but instead of a bunch of sorority girls getting killed off, it's a bunch of frat boys getting killed off. And it's supposed to like over-sexualize these frat bros the same way that 80s slasher movies would over-sexualize sorority girls. So, yeah, go check it out.
Now, is there a part 1 and 2? Or did they just
you don't have to watch
it?
those to understand this because they don't exist.
Yeah. Continue with the story there, Dan.
Okay, so had a small screening over at the Chinese Theater. Soon after the film was finished, Eris and his crew traveled the world premiering this film. On September 12th of 1998, it premiered in Greece at the Athens Film Festival. In Canada, on September 13th, it was shown at the Toronto International Film Festival. Now, the film didn't take off like Eris and Billy Zane expected it to, and it was kind of telling at the Toronto International Film Festival when Zane had requested that during the press conference, he only had local media sources come in and not the national or the international press. So I feel like Zane is kind of weary now of this coming out, and I think maybe partially because this is at the same time that Titanic had come out as well. So I'm wondering if he's getting any pressure from James Cameron to be like, you're known for being this big blockbuster Academy Award winning movie, and you just did an Ed Wood movie at the same time. I also kind of imagine that any press that Billy Zane would do, the questions would not actually be about The Day I Died, but rather everyone asking about Titanic instead.
Is it annoying that people love the movie like they do?
Yeah, I hate it. It's awful, really. No, you know, come on. It's the gift that keeps giving. It's such a great honor.
And not focusing on this movie. I have a suspicion there.
Yeah,
good
that
point.
makes sense.
So touring around with this movie in Sweden, they featured this at the Fantastic Film Festival Lund. In June of 1999, it was shown in France at the Avignon Film Festival. In the U.S., the film had a big premiere on September 10th of 1999 in New York at the Screening Room. Now, here's where things kind of turn. Unfortunately, around this time of the premiere, their distribution company, Cine Canon Pictures, that's Canon spelled with a Q, Sine qua non. They ran out of money to help promote and distribute this film. At this time, the company was trying to theatrically re-release the 1973 animated film Fantastic Planet.
Spellbinding science fiction. Fantastic Planet.
Which had failed. And For the Day I Died, that was pretty much the nail in the coffin for them. Be like, this is not picking up steam at festivals. We can't get this movie that's in theaters right now. That's not making any money. And they were just like, that's it. We're dried up. We can't do any more after this. And this left a lot of people unpaid for the work that was done, including the web designer Gregory Gilland, who created the unfinished website iwokeupearly.com.
Is that still alive?
It is still there. Has anyone gone to this website?
I'm doing it right now.
No, but I'm doing it right now. Is this like spacejam.com? Oh, yeah.
There's a game you can play there where you can dress up Billy Zane.
I can't believe this is still active. Who is still paying for the...
The company's there. I don't know what the name of the company is, but it actually does say the company that is in charge of this.
What?
This is wonderful. The poster alone is amazing.
The poster is so weird because it looks like it's stretched out. That's the actual poster.
Thank you. I'm not going to do anything else for the rest of the day. Sorry, guys. We were supposed to record.
Oh, there's a contest section that just says, this section will be open soon. Please check back. When will it be open?
Bring it back.
Oh, that's incredible.
That's awesome.
So for a while, there was a donation link to make up for his losses. That link is no longer there. I actually checked. It's actually being maintained by Rowan Moon Web Design. Ooh, I should go to them to make my websites now. Eris kept on touring around the world trying to show off this movie, and he started doing this on his own dime. There was a single screening at the 2000 B-Movie Film Festival where it actually won several awards, including Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Actor. In March 1st of the year 2000, Eris held a video premiere in Hungary. I don't understand what it means by video premiere. There was also another video premiere in Germany of April 3rd of the same year. And here's the closest we got to distribution of this movie, because in Germany, they started circulating bootlegged VHS copies of this film. And that's the closest that we've got to distribution. And that is the reason why we can't find a proper copy of this film.
Now I get it. Someone probably had a bootleg copy and then just uploaded it.
In Germany, the film was known as Ed Wood's The Day I Died. So if you're looking for that bootleg copy, that's what you got to search for. The details are not certain, but from what I've read, there was a lot of legal issues as well that came into play, and that's kind of why it can't be distributed as well. So I'm guessing, like, once Cinecanon went belly up, like, part of their assets may be this film. So that might be the reason why.
Now, I know you kind of talked about this a little bit already, but it seems like this was pretty well received. Like, it got the best picture at that B-Movie Festival. But, I mean, even from local screenings and stuff, when they were touring it around, did it seem to have a pretty universally positive reaction?
No, not really.
Oh, okay.
Part of it is that a lot of people didn't understand that this was an Ed Wood movie. And I think this is coming off of the fact that we just saw the Ed Wood biopic, which was really well done. So I think a lot of people were kind of expecting that and not really more of Ed Wood, because they didn't really want more of Ed Wood. They wanted to know about.
They wanted more about him. Yeah, that makes sense.
The touring kept going, and he ended up in Japan. What's really interesting is, and I'm going to go through some of the translations here. When he went to Japan, they actually had to translate the names for this so that people would understand. Like, this happens with most movies whenever they get there, but I think Japan has everyone beat when they retitled this movie Crazy Nuts Get Up Early.
Very accurate.
In Spain, where they got a DVD premiere on February 18th of 2004. Again, don't know what that means, video DVD premiere. There it was known as I Woke Up Early, the Day of My Death. In Brazil, it is known as I Woke Up Early on the Day of My Death. And on TV, which it weirdly circulates on television, it is known as The Last Day of My Life. In Bulgaria, it is known as the day of my death. In Venezuela, it was the last day of my life. And in Poland, it was on the day of my death, I woke up early.
There is something really, really, really evocative of the title of I Woke Up Early the Day I Died, and how it, starts off innocuous and ends with the word died, like the beginning monologue of American Beauty type of thing, where it's somebody being totally innocuous about their own death. I don't speak any of those other languages, so I don't know if it's got the same poetry in those languages. I mean, the Japanese title definitely has the same poetry.
Yeah. Oh, man, if you're going to get people in those seats, yeah, you call a movie Crazy Nuts, get up early.
I mean, I'll buy a ticket.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you make a movie that's called Velocipaster. Of course I'm going to watch it. The director, Aris, he has claimed that he started writing a prequel to The Day I Died, and he has written about 40 pages. The last this was claimed, this is also like the early 2000s, so who knows where he's at with this. So far, there are no plans for that film. There is also a director's cut for this, which he is waiting for the right moment to release. So come on, release the Aris cut.
Yeah, the moment is now.
As of now, there's no plans for that. While I was going through this, I kept on debating whether or not Aris Iliopoulos was really the right guy for this movie. And it was something that I kind of wrestled with for a while. And then I found that there was one story from when they were filming this that made me believe that he indeed was the perfect director for this. And that was the day that Dolores Fuller came on set to see what was going on. And while she was on set, she actually brought the Angora sweater that she wore in Glen or Glenda. When he saw this, he freaked out, and he actually recreated that scene with Dolores.
Glen, I don't fully understand this, but maybe together we can work it out.
And she passes him the Angora sweater. I was like, that is the right man for this job. He gets it. He understands Ed Wood. Nowadays, Aris, he simply travels the world as a photographer and an artist, and has not really been wanting to be part of the world of Hollywood after that. And then the last thing that I want to leave you with is, so in 1965, Ed Wood wrote a memoir that was called Hollywood Rat Race. It was all about his experiences in the entertainment business. The book wouldn't see the light of day not until 1998. He gave inspiring writers this advice: just keep on writing. Even if your story gets worse, you'll get better.
Fantastic. And quite true.
I'm sure you know lots of people as well like this, Dan. I definitely know lots of people who try to make purposefully campy or purposefully bad things, and I feel like it's almost never successful. I think you can't set out to make a purposefully bad thing. I think there's exceptions to that. Somebody I knew in film school loved old serials, like the type of adventure serials that Indiana Jones is based off of. But he wanted to do these old black and white adventure serials, and with the purposeful over-the-top acting and the things that don't make sense. And they just were never fun to watch because it's super, super hard to do something purposefully bad. It's extremely difficult. And I feel like if I did see this movie in the way it was meant to be seen, in a regular speed with the actual soundtrack, I feel like I still would have been kind of just bored and not super interested in it, because it is something where you are missing that kind of madness, that kind of magic that comes from a big personality like Ed Wood trying to make it the way he actually wants to make it. And I think when you remove that personality and you try to be about that personality, it just doesn't have the same magic.
Yeah, I would agree. And that's why I nominate Guy Madden to take over Ed Wood's mantle, because he very much does kind of similar things to Ed Wood, where he's not trying to be bad, but he also doesn't care about making it a certain way.
Yeah. And that's one of the other interesting things when it comes to Ed Wood, but just other bad filmmakers who are Guy Madden. So again, I'm not familiar with him at all, but based off of what you're talking about, he just has such a specific vision and such a specific idea, and that's what makes it so interesting. And I think like the best bad movies are the ones that come from this singular vision and this singular auteur, and you can't really be somebody else taking that idea, and it's just not going to work the same way. It's not going to have the same magic. I don't want to see anybody else make a Tommy Wiseau script. I want to just see Tommy Wiseau direct and star in a Tommy Wiseau script.
We do a series on bad horror movies. We'll throw in an episode every once in a while where we watch a bunch of bad ones and critique them. And Sharon made me watch Redneck Zombie Vampires.
No, it's just Redneck Zombies.
Oh.
Were there vampires in it, though?
No, it's just Redneck Zombies.
Okay.
And that's probably the worst movie I've ever seen. Like, watching Plan 9, everyone's like, oh, it's the worst movie ever made. No. There are so many other movies that are worse than Plan 9.
But to your point about making stuff intentionally bad, these were bad actors trying to act badly, and it was just painful.
Mm-hmm. There's definitely like this endearing part of these filmmakers that's really hard to replicate. If you had brought on someone who was an experienced director, and the reason why I say like Eris is the perfect person for this job was that he was so passionate about Ed Wood and trying to be that person, be that director like he was, but he wasn't a director who could just kind of like fit the mold. He wasn't a well-decorated director before then. Our gravitation towards these filmmakers like Neil Breen, like Tommy Wiseau, the reason why we're gravitated to them is not because of their bad films, but because of their endurance to make a movie no matter what. We are addicted to their passion.
I am absolutely jealous of Neil Breen's determination to keep making his movies. I wish I had that kind of drive.
Or on the flip side, obviously Sharon and I have mentioned David Lynch a few times, but he's kind of the same way, just, well, depending on how you feel, I guess, about his work, but him too. He has a vision and he's determined to make it that way, and he's not going to stop.
Yeah,
absolutely.
But he's never made anything bad. In my opinion, he's brilliant, and
but
you either understand it or you don't understand it.
But he's got that same passion.
Yes.
I think that's also part of the fascination of bad movies and bad movie makers is that they do feel like they're just one step away from being actually brilliant. It feels like the line between David Lynch and Ed Wood is actually a lot thinner. Like, it's just whether or not you understand what they're doing. And if somehow we could key into what Ed Wood is thinking, maybe he's actually a genius. And it's just the paradox of art and artists is that it is really hard to be able to say something is objectively good or objectively bad.
There was a host from Vox, or a journalist that was interviewed on Vox, and he was talking about The Room, and he was talking about how many times he's seen it. Like, he's seen the midnight screenings more than a handful of times. He's seen this movie over 100 times personally. He's watched it at parties, and he keeps thinking to himself, like, if this is a terrible movie, like, why does it bring me so much joy? This film brings me joy. And if it's something that brings you joy, is it really a bad movie?
So subjective. We can talk about this for like hours and hours and hours. I mean, it's just...
Eris Iliopoulos, I feel like, has a ton of love and respect for Ed Wood and wanted to celebrate that. I think the way to celebrate that is to do something like the biopic of Ed Wood or to do something like The Disaster Artist. If you try to do exactly what they're doing, it's not going to work out. But if you try to tell the story of them, like, I think that is something much more interesting. And I do think there is something really fascinating about like watching a story of the actual life of these terrible filmmakers. There's got to be some movie or TV episode or something that is celebrating and kind of aping Ed Wood's style in a way that works and in a way that celebrates, you know, Ed Wood or a different bad filmmaker. But I'm struggling to think of anything beyond that. Tim Burton obviously loves that campiness and uses it a bunch. But even then, that's taken from all sorts of things.
I would say if there's a medium that honors respects and also makes fun of it to no end would have to be Mystery Science Theater 3000.
Written, produced, directed. The poor guy wasn't smart enough to spread the blame around.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's a good point.
Because that is not just a celebration of the movie, but that is celebration of the real special part about it, which is the conversations you have about it with your friends and the Church of Ed Wood that you attend. And that's what MST3K is celebrating, is the conversations around it more than just the film itself.
100% agree.
I just want to say that Billy Zane makes a really good-looking woman.
I would agree.
I completely agree with that.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the show, Sharon and Melinda.
Thank you, guys.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure to be able to talk to you. If people want to find more about your podcast, where can they go find all of that?
You can listen to our podcast on basically almost any streaming service that's available. Like you, Daniel, we love Halloween. This is like our time of the year, and we have a bunch of really fun Halloween episodes coming out this month. We just did our annual horror movie trivia and pumpkin beer tasting episode.
Okay.
So,
Yes, I just listened to that episode too.
how did you do? Did you beat us?
I did poorly.
Okay.
I don't feel bad about how bad you guys did, because that was ridiculous, some of those questions. You're like, hey, the director of Friday the 13th Part 4, what's his cousin's name?
That's how we feel. Thank you.
Thank you for making us feel not so dumb. But yeah, check out that episode. You know, grab some pumpkin beer at home, put it on, keep score. Let us know if you beat us. There's an episode that we did that you might appreciate, David. We kind of did an experiment with my sister-in-law, who also does not like horror movies, hates them, gets really easily scared. But we were able to convince her to watch 5 classics that she had never seen before: Psycho, Halloween, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Nightmare on Elm Street, and Friday the 13th. And we did a pre and post interview, and she's in therapy now, but
I wonder if she does the thing that I have to do whenever, I have to just stand up and be as far as away from the TV as possible. Like, I remember we watched Midsommar recently. The entire time, I was just literally standing at the other side of our apartment because I was like, I'm going to watch it, but all the way over there. Or being in the theater, like even sci-fi movies that kind of like are like horror sci-fi movies. We saw Annihilation in the theater, and I was standing next to the exit door for the entire last 20 minutes of that movie because that...
Even with Oscar Isaac shirtless?
I mean, I do love some shirtless Oscar Isaac, but the terrifying Natalie Portman copy that's at the end of that movie... I can't do it.
Wow. I'm the complete opposite. In high school, I was watching Saw alone in a basement. And this is one of those like Michigan basements that's like all cement.
Oh,
yeah.
Nope.
We in Illinois, Freddy Krueger.
I watched the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre by myself when I was 12 years old in my bedroom in the dark. Like, I love being scared. That's like the best feeling in the world to me. Maybe listen to that episode and take some pointers from her. But
For sure. I've seen Psycho out of that list. I don't think I've seen any of the other ones.
Okay, well, hey, set up your own challenge for yourself. Let's see how many you can do this month.
I can do a thriller. A murder thriller is totally different to me than, like, horror.
Jess's reaction to Texas Chainsaw Massacre is priceless.
David, you might appreciate this. It's from the host from Reply All, but one of the hosts there is extremely afraid of horror films. And to get over this fear, they actually concocted a list of like least scary horror films to most scary horror films. And he's actually going through backwards and watching these films and doing like a review of it.
I gotta check that out.
And then every once in a while, Jason Mantzoukas will come in to those episodes and like talk about these horror films.
Oh, I'm gonna have to check that out. But our listeners, before they check out Reply All, should definitely check out Horror's Talking Horror.
Yes, please.
Absolutely. Horror's Talk Horror. And we also have 2 episodes coming up this month of basically all the October movies we've been watching, because we try and do 31 horror movies every October. A lot of people do this challenge. And if you're not so much into horror, we mix it up. We've done true crime episodes. We've had episodes where we talk to paranormal investigators. We've read people's ghost stories on the air. So if you have a ghost story, creepy story, scary story you want to send us that. You can email us at horrorstalkhorror@gmail.com. We just did Twin Peaks episode and discussed the sound design on that show. So if you're a Twin Peaks fan, check out those episodes. But yeah, we've done a lot of different things, so there's a little something for everyone.
And you can find more episodes of this podcast at our website, pipedreampodcast.com, where you can find shows like The Weird Alphabet, Escape from Walt Disney, and Come On Fahoogwapods. We would also love to talk to you on social media. We're on Twitter and Instagram at HDTNGM. And we have an email address. What's that email address again, Dan?
notgetmade@gmail.com.
Perfect. We'd love to hear from you, hear about anything we get wrong, and any suggestions for future topics for us to cover. We do have a Patreon, so for Pipe Dream Podcasts as a website. So you supporting it would also be supporting things like Come On Fahoogwapods, The Weird Alphabet, any other weird projects we end up doing. On that Patreon page, for $2 a month, you can get an extra bonus show where we all hang out and talk about whatever. For $5 a month, you can get access to things like notes from this show, because Dan always writes out a whole bunch of notes, and you can get those files on our $5 a month tier, as well as unreleased episodes of podcasts that we didn't make. Go find all of that at our Patreon page. You can find that link at pipedreampodcast.com. Am I forgetting anything else to talk about, Dan?
For $20 a month, David will watch a horror movie of your choosing.
Oh!
Gauntlet thrown.
Interesting.
That's actually a pretty good idea. All right. Well, I guess that's a good note to wrap things up on. Yeah. Thanks again. Thanks again, Sharon and Melinda. And thank you, everybody, for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so
Thank
much.
you.
Mm-hmm.
This is the most fantastic story I've ever heard. And every word of it's true, too. That's the fantastic part of it.